It's officially girl talk time here, y'all, on Glory 93.9 FM. It's your girl Marisha here in your company. It is a beautiful Thursday. Yes, it's a beautiful Thursday, 4:30 in the afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here for Girl Talk. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for today's conversation. But before we jump in and before I introduce my guest, don't forget you have an opportunity to win. Yes, you do, to win today's giveaway, courtesy of Lowe's Wholesale from the main collection. It's a shampoo and conditioner. So you can go ahead, like and subscribe our podcast, our Girl Talk podcast, Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. We're on all podcast platforms. Or you can like our Instagram page. Send us a screenshot to 828 2543 242 828 2543. Send us a screenshot. You have an opportunity to win. Yes, a free shampoo and conditioner from the main collection, courtesy of Lowe's. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. And before I bring her in, I want to tell you a little bit about my very first encounter with her. My very, very first encounter with this beautiful woman was at an event hosted by a mutual girlfriend of ours, Raquel Pinder. It was the first time that I ever had face-to-face interaction with her. And she was such a blessing to me. She gave me some encouraging words. We exchanged words after that event, really briefly. And it was just her positivity that really drew me toward her. And I started following her on social media ever since. And I've just been kind of like in the background, like stalking her on social media, like liking her photos and pictures because they're always amazing, because her family is beautiful. She's beautiful. So I'm just like her little social media stalker, just kind of in the corner, like rooting her on. And so she was just a major encouragement to me in my life during that time with what I was going through. The exact words that I needed to hear, the Lord used her. And she spoke those words to me, and I would never forget that moment. So I want to introduce to some of you, but I'm pretty sure like all of you know exactly who this is that I'm about to introduce to you today. One, Mistress, it's a Bahamian to say it, Mistress Anastarcia Palacious. Hey, Star.
Hey, Marisha. Oh, girl, you had me over just saying amen and thanking God as you did that introduction. I do remember that event that Kelly had. That was years ago, because I don't even think Cairo was around just yet.
No.
Yeah. And,
that was
God
a while back.
Yeah, and in that season, I remember the vision that God had given me, and it really was one where, he was saying to me, like, Star, I just want people to do the things I told them to do. Like, y'all must be doing a lot. And that's cool.
Yes,
but I just put a vision in your heart, and I'm just asking, like, stay committed to it. Like, don't worry about all this other stuff, like just the one thing. And obedience is better than sacrifice. And so even though I shared that vision at that time, Marisha, it still took me a while to get in line with exactly what it was that he was calling me to do. But I know that it's been good to know that it's been a blessing for you, because I know that the show is a blessing for so many. And so just great to be with you today.
I'm so excited about this conversation that we're going to have. And so we're here on Girl Talk. Our theme for this season is Find Your Tribe. We encourage all of our girlfriends out there, listen, you need to get you some good girlfriends. You need a good group of women who are there to support you, who have your back, who can be there to help to mature you, because iron sharpens iron. So they need to be able to call you out on some stuff and also be that shoulder that you can lean on. So listen, we're encouraging all of our girlfriends out there, listen, get you some good girlfriends. You don't need a girlfriend who you have to talk to every day. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that girlfriend that you can go to when you know that they care for you, that they genuinely love you, and that they want what's best for you. So that's our encouragement. As we begin today's show, we're going to have this conversation. We're answering the question, do women really want equality? Do women really want equality? And Star, I want to tell you where this question is coming from, and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. I'm just going to let you take over. I'm going to let you talk. I am not talking at all. Let me tell you where this question came from. I was having a conversation with my coworker, and we were listening to a show that airs here on Glory 93.9 FM, because I don't know if you know that Michelle Malcolm is on our station now. So she always has these awesome empowerment shows for women and so on and so forth. And I was saying to my coworker how I grew up. After my parents divorced, I watched my mother, and like she did everything. Mm-hmm. She installed the shelves. She changed the tires. My mother, she's just an incredible woman. There's nothing that she can't do. There's no tool she doesn't know how to use. If something's broken, she knows how to fix it. Like she can do, like in my mind, she's Superwoman. There's nothing that she can't do. If she can't do it, it's because
just watching her as she like led the country through this pandemic, I was like, that's Marisha, mommy, child. Y'all better listen.
Listen. So to me, like my mother is like, I don't know, like to me, she's supernatural. And I'm not even over exaggerating. That is truthfully like my view of my mother. And I grew up with this woman who always knew what to do, who always knew what was necessary. If she couldn't physically do it herself, she knew where to find someone to get it done.
Right.
And while I admire her star like that, listen, my mother is my heart. Anyone who knows me, they think that I'm an only child. They don't even know that my mother has 2 other kids because of how much I love and adore my mother. But the thing that I looked at my mother's life and I recognized that I didn't want to use the screwdriver star. I don't want to change the tile. I don't want to have to get a drill to be fixing the closet, the shower. I mean, the rod in the closet, the clothing rod in the closet. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to be putting up the shelves with the drill. I don't want to. I do not want to do it. I don't. In fact, I don't even want to call the person to do it. And I was talking to my coworker and I was telling him how, like, I just feel like that's what a man is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And this is how I guess you could say this conversation was kind of sparked. And then I recognized, I said, you know something? I said, I don't even think I want to pay bills either. I don't know. I don't want to do that. I mean, who wants to pay bills, right? I was like, I don't want to pay bills. I don't want to make all the money. No, I don't want to do that either. And I was like, yeah, no, I could stay home. I really could. And I really enjoyed the little banter in that post that you had the other day where the ladies were talking about whether or not they would stay at home moms. That's me. Yeah. Listen, I will stay home. Yes, I will. Absolutely. I will cook. I will clean. Now, of course, I'll have my little business on the side because I am here for the purpose. There's something in the earth that God has called me to do. So I will have those things going on. But listen, I will stay home. Yes, I will. I will stay home. I will give you my money. I will say, here's the money that I have made. Take this money, pay the bills, and then give me back what I can spend.
Yeah.
You know, after you done put whatever you need to put in savings, put whatever you need to put in investment, whatever. Yes, please take my money. Please do whatever it needs to be done with it that's best for our family. Yeah. And I realized that I was created for relationship. I was created for companionship. Why is there so much, I guess you could say, negativity attached to the independent woman, making her seem like she doesn't need a man? And that's really where I want to begin today's conversation as we talk about this concept of equality, because I'm not sure if equality is really what we're looking for. And I'm going to let.
All right, Marisha, you were just so amazing. And I'm just so happy that we get to have this conversation, right? Because you just have so much energy and I love that. Yes. I have a lot of energy too. You know, Marisha, I think your points are valid. And I think whenever we frame this conversation around equality, we want to remember some different words, right? So equality would mean and I have brothers and sisters. So in our house, if mommy gave one child 3 pieces of chicken, everybody needs to have 3 pieces of chicken, because if it ain't equal, your favorite, it's a problem, right? And as a mom now, my kids too, it have to be equal. And so equal means that we have the exact same thing. And I think that is quite fair in this conversation around gender, because in equality and what we want is for people to have the choice. So you may say, Star, I don't want to change no tire, Star. That ain't for me. Like I'm not for companionship. I won't be at home. I won't be cooking. And Marisha, that's your choice. There may be another woman that says, I don't want a man changing no tires for me. I won't be able to change all my tires. I don't feel like I want to be in the kitchen. Let him stay home, right? And so the idea about equality that we want is just for women to be able to say, I choose. Can we have the option to choose what's best for us? And so I think that when it comes down to that, yes, women still want equality because they want to be able to say, this is my choice. And my partner and I have come to this decision, and I'm not being forced into this one way or the next. I'm not forced to work. I'm not forced to stay home. I have the choice. And so that's what equality looks like. And so we know from a national perspective, more than once we voted on actual laws that separate us from men. That say, if you have this child and you have this child to someone who's not Bahamian, this person is not allowed to be Bahamian. But it discriminates directly because it says to a man, if you have this child can be Bahamian, right? And so even from the male, there are some challenges there, because if they are unwed when the man has this child, this man has no rights to pass on citizenship to this child. And so from that perspective, from a legal perspective, we are unequal. And I continue to believe that we have to change that, because there's no legal ramifications that stop me from choice. And that's where equality comes in. Now, if we were to broaden the discussion, Marisha, we were to focus something maybe on race and the fact that we don't see maybe equal treatment in systems. There's no law that prevents racism, but there are laws that and systems in place that kind of hold people of certain nationalities back. We can say that we're not necessarily looking for equality, because equality is not equity. Equity means then that if, for example, my son is 2 foot tall and my daughter is 4 foot tall and I'm 6 foot tall, very far from 6 foot, and I'm 6 foot tall, there's no way for us to be equal because our heights are different. And so in order for the situation to be equitable, I might need to stack 10 chairs under my son, 4 chairs under my daughter, and then I just stand up. And in that way, we're now all 6 feet and there's an equity at play. And so, it's important for us to distinguish those things. In race, it's going to look a little different from gender. But in gender, anybody having a conversation around equality is just saying, I want to have a choice. Please let me have a choice. I would like to work a 9 to 5, or I would like to run my own business. I just want to stay home with these babies. I just want to hug them and kiss them. I just want to cook all day. But it is my choice, and I should not be shamed for my choice, whatever that choice may be. It's great that people fought us to have the right to work, but if I choose not to work, then that's still my choice. It's fine.
Yes. And it's definitely a conversation that I don't think is out there in the masses, because like I said, and you would have been exposed to this on social media, there are the positive independent women, and then there's the negative independent women conversation, right? And so there's this idea that the independent woman does not need the man. And I feel like there's this skewed view in some ways to the negative conversation that is out there, where it seems like women are saying that men are not necessary, and that's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that there are circumstances and situations that have forced women to adjust to living life without men, and that equality and equity is what we want. We want both of those things. I've heard so many women talk about how they want equity, but they don't want equality. And I always ask, like, well, so explain that to me. Like, what do you mean? Like, why don't you want the freedom to choose? And then I remember it was like a few months back in the midst of the pandemic, when we had our like first break free, like when we were allowed to go out the first time. Yeah. And so we had a youth meeting one night, and of course I'm a youth leader at my church, and so we had a youth meeting one night, and we were having this conversation about Genesis again, about Adam and Eve. And one of the things that came up in the conversation that we were having was that it is Satan's plan. It was his plan from the beginning, to make the man feel insignificant. If you look at the exchange that happened in that initial situation, in that initial story. So you see how Satan approaches the woman. Doesn't even speak to the man, doesn't even acknowledge Adam's presence. Satan speaks to Eve and then tells Eve to influence her husband. And it's weird. It's interesting because what we realize coming out of that conversation is that, truthfully, Satan not only placed enmity between the woman and her children, but he also placed enmity between her and the man, because of this constant fight now for, I guess you could say, authority.
Okay.
I don't want to say authority, but that's the word that we're going to use. And it seems as if we have created a culture in humanity that suggests that the man has to be above the woman, or the woman has to be above the man. That there is no way we can be on a level playing field. That it's not possible for us to have equity and equality. It's not possible for us to acknowledge one another as, you are a human male, I am a human female, and we can have the same opportunities. We can do the same things in life. We can make the same amount of money on the same job. We can have the same salary, it's where it's not a case where I have the same job as a man and he gets paid more because he's a man, and these things are happening. These things are happening now, where there are just certain jobs that women still are not allowed to have. Point blank. Like, they will not hire a woman to do it. She may be qualified to do it. She may have gone to school. She may have had the experience. And the decision is still, yeah, no, we don't hire women to do this job. And so we're still seeing this in our reality. We're still seeing this within our culture. And I think it's so important for us to understand, the historicity of the issue, because I believe that back and forth, whether people believe, that the story is actually real or not, I am convinced that when sin entered the world, however you believe it entered the world, it put an enmity between the woman and the man, where there was no longer that power of agreement that the Bible talks about, that threefold cord that's not easily broken, because when two lie together, they have heat. That it was the plan of the enemy to separate. There is no greater form of agreement in the earth than a man and a woman coming together. We don't see any form of agreement in the earth that's greater than that. We could have two females come together. We could have two males come together. Y'all could live your life and do whatever y'all want to do. But the reality is, when a man and a woman comes together, that is the greatest form of agreement. And I think that it is the plan of the enemy to fight that, which is why we have all of these other iterations of genders that are popping up to skew and pervert the greatest form of agreement. And because this agreement has been severed and perverted, we have women fighting and men pushing against the fight. Pushing against the fight. And they're pushing against the fight. And it's so crazy how they're pushing against the fight. They're pushing against the fight in ways that don't really make sense. It doesn't really make sense. And then it's like, women, we're fighting, but I don't really know if we know what we're fighting for. Like, we're just kind of going at it, and we're going at one another, and we're going at one another for the same things, and we're fighting each other for the same things instead of fighting the systems and I will almost say the principality and the power that has placed us in the war. We're going at one another instead of going at the source of the thing that has us at war with one another.
Yeah. So you said a lot there, Marisha. So I'll just kind of comment on a couple that I can note. The first is that I'm so happy that we're talking this good Easter weekend. And so the beautiful thing is, while Satan came and he brought sin in through this interaction with Adam and Eve, when Christ came and he died on that cross for us, Marisha, he took that away, right? He broke those barriers out to the gift of God's amazing grace, us to be able to come into the presence of God again. And so we know that if we believe in God, and we have the blessing and then the burden of having believed in God early on in our lives. So therefore, the fruit of the Spirit should manifest itself in us. Our lives should look a little different. But the thief on the cross had no time before he met Jesus and before Jesus died, other than to say, could you let me into your kingdom? And his faith in God allowed him in. And so we remember this, that even though Satan came with this plan, Jesus has already defeated the plan. And so it's up to us to decide, are we living in defeat? Or are we living in victory?
Oh, that's so good. That is so good.
And if we are living in the victory, if we're living in this abundant life that Christ has created, then we ain't worrying about the enemy and his plan. The systems of the world now that we have to address and live in and deal with daily are going to be some influences for us. And so it's important that we begin to do what the Bible says to us as Christians, guard our minds, right? And we guard our minds through the word of God. We guard our minds by affirming ourselves in what God teaches. And I agree that the union of man and woman is incredibly powerful. My husband is my best friend in this world. I look at my life before him, and sis was always cool. I was always pretty good. Fabulous. Right. This song, I don't know if y'all would play it on Glory 93.9, but he talks about, I'm a movement by myself, but I'm a force when we're together. And that's what I think we need to do, is to just lift each other up and to support each other. But even with that being said, Marisha, I also appreciate and understand that men and women, while we may be equal in our ability to choose, while we're equal in the sight of God, while we are equal in our mental capacity, that there are differences in our anatomy, and therefore that differences in different abilities. My husband cannot carry a baby. He may want to carry my, like he sees me. I have two beautiful children. I thank God. And, my pregnancies were not easy, Marisha. I was very sick throughout all of them. I was sick even in my delivery babies. And my husband would always say to any other man, and I've heard him say it before, if I could have carried these children for my wife, I would have. I didn't like seeing her be as sick as she was to bring these babies into the world. That's his thought. But that's not the reality. I have to bear that burden. And so he says to me, you could bear that burden. Only you could push these kids into the world and go through that pain. So therefore, they're going to think that only I want to take on for us, right? Like, I only want to stress about this because I don't have the stress of carrying a baby for 9 months. And so I think we can start to see and honor women for their capacity. And for very complicated reasons, including our history, including the fact that, before birth control, childbirth, just would keep women pregnant. Like they just kept having kids. So there was really no time to work, right? But for many years, there was no economic opportunity. So you didn't have the opportunity to be on radio or host a podcast. There was no internet. Like there were just not these avenues to make money other than going into the field and doing hard labor that you couldn't do if you were pregnant. Those sorts of things separated us from men in terms of our ability to produce work. But that doesn't mean that our children aren't meaningful, or that the lives we lived with what we could do based on the fact that we was always pregnant, that those either. And so I think for me, one of the greatest things I've had to do as I've kind of stepped back from the working world a bit and focus more on these babies in this particular season is, one, recognize it as a season, and two, appreciate the value. Like these children are changes. God says they're going to be mighty in the land. And I had the opportunity to bring them into the world. There is a value associated with that. Nobody may pay me $100,000 to do that, but that's fine. The point is that someday they will make more than $100,000 because I was able to bring them into the world. So we have to be able to see ourselves, whether we are men or whether we are women, as people with unique value, and knowing that even though God sees us as equal, the way that our roles may play out in our home is different. And the biggest lesson I learned, and I thank my bishop for this, Bishop Leish Boyd. When we were doing our marital counseling, he said to us, like, in to make this thing work, one, remember that marriage is long suffering. Two, remember that, God is asking you guys to sacrifice unto each other. And three, remember that to get it done, whoever gets it done could get it done. So if you could pick the child up, that's not a boy or girl thing. That's just a does this make sense thing, right?
Exactly.
That's not a boy or girl thing. Does it make sense? And so I think a lot of us have a lot of healing to do around relationships, around this idea of men and women. Many young boys, Marisha, are hurt very early on in their lives by rejection from girls. And they carry that rejection for years. Similarly, many girls, because they are often preyed on by older guys earlier on, are hurt earlier on. And therefore, they build up this wall. And this whole idea of I don't need anybody is really just a trauma response. Because when you needed people, they weren't there for you. And so over the years, we've now developed this thing where I don't need no man and I could do this all by myself. And sis, yes, you could, but are you happy though? Or are you just bitter? See, and that's the problem, right? And for men, it's like, well, all these gals want is my money. All these gals want is my things. When
right.
You could actually build that together if you were willing to listen. But all you really want to do is not push yourself to the highest heights that you could go. Understanding, yes, that there have been some systematic issues about how we support Black men and how they are able to raise in our society. I appreciate that. But let's acknowledge that. And then let's start to work on healing those traumas so that we could work together. But a lot of it, Marisha, is just hurt, plain and simple.
We're walking around with hurt, and we're allowing hurt to define the roles that we place on individuals in our lives. So, this hurt woman, she marries this hurt man, and then now they're in a marriage and they're bucking heads because I'm hurt, he's hurt, and I'm mad because he hurt, and she mad because he hurt, and everybody just mad at each other, and we produce mad children because we don't ever heal. All we do is cope within our family systems, and then we produce children, in toxic environments who just basically are a product of their environment. So they do what they see. And so they saw how bad, their mother spoke to their father when he was around. And then they noticed that he stopped coming around because, he wasn't really respected in the home. And then when that guy that they now start dating is not consistent, they think that's love. And so it's okay that he's not consistent. It's okay that he could, ghost you for like 3 days and then come back, because that's what your daddy did. Your daddy used to leave your mommy for like a week and then come back and be like, okay, yeah, we husband and wife again. So we accept these things in relationships because we've been nurtured in environments where they happen. And then it's just toxicity breeding more toxicity. And then we try to bring it we try to bring the hurt, like you mentioned, the trauma, we try to bring it to the playing field together instead of healing, and then bringing the healed and whole individuals into the playing field. I want to bring something else into this conversation that we're having. And it's something that my pastor actually was talking about recently at a wedding. Of course, Star, I could have sometimes like 3 weddings on a Saturday. It just all depends on how many people decide to get married, right? So I'm back in crazy wedding season, and just Saturday I had like 2 funerals and a wedding. It was a crazy day for me. But he said something at this wedding on Saturday that was so powerful to me. And he was talking to the groom, of course. And he said to the groom, he said, it is so important for you to protect this woman because she sees you as a protector. And then he said, there are too many women out there that have had to take on the role of protector when they didn't want to. And then he talked about the passage of scripture where it says that the husband is the head of the wife, and how it's been perverted to mean that he has this authority over the woman. And he broke it down in the Greek and explained that head meant protector. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that he's above. It just means that he takes the hit first. That if someone is trying to come and attack the family, he's the head, so he gets hit first. And that the woman is the body. That blew my mind. Because when you think about just our human anatomy, just the basic human anatomy, when you consider the fact that the brain sends signals to the body, but the brain can't function without the body. It's impossible. It is absolutely impossible. So he says to the man, he says, you want this woman to love you, to honor, to respect you. You want to have the power of agreement. Then you have to influence the body as the head. You have to protect the body, and you have to influence the body. If you're not getting what you want out of your wife, it's because you're not influencing her correctly. And I was like, whoa. Like, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then he talked about the reverse role, about the importance of the woman in stabilizing the head. It's her job. It's the job of the body. The body is the place that the head rests on. And so he said to the bride, he says, if this man is not lining up the way that you want him to, it's because you're not keeping him in a stable environment. The environment that you have him in, that he comes home to, it's full of instability. And that's why you're not getting from him what you want. And that's when I realized that we could all have our own interpretations of what we feel, Paul was saying to the church when he wrote that passage of scripture. We could have, excellent and powerful concepts like the one I mentioned by my bishop that could give specific instructions to help people in marriage, in conversations, in how they deal with one another, how they approach life, how they even govern their relationship. But the reality of the matter, and the thing that stood ever so loudly to me, is if a man and woman are without purpose in their lives, then they definitely won't know who they are. And they will always struggle and fight with equality or equity or whatever we want to, call this thing or whatever we want to define it. And I think our biggest issue, Star, is the fact that we have so many people out there clueless of who they are because they have not sought out their identity in God. They've not taken the time to figure out, what is my purpose in the earth? Why am I here? Why is God lending me his breath? Because if I knew what I was really here for, would I really be fighting, or would I be taking a stance with confidence, knowing that this is who I am and this is what I deserve? Because I feel like there's a difference when you go into a war from a place of trauma, like you mentioned, or when you go into war and you stand in the confidence of who you are and in what you were called to do, and then you fight from that place. I think it's a different kind of war, because then you're not scratching at one another. You're not hitting below the belt. You're not insulting. You're not looking to be lord over one another, but you're actually just functioning in your truth and your identity and who you really are and who God has truthfully called you to be. What do you think about that?
So I think, again, Marisha, powerful stuff. Love that concept that Bishop gave about the head and our desire, our need as women to stabilize that head. I thought that was powerful as well. And I agree with you, Marisha, that it's, this thing is just about respecting one another. Like if you love somebody, like you love yourself.
Yes.
Like you just are gonna do nice things. Like why would you be mean to somebody who love like you? Like, I don't know. People come into this thing truly understanding love, right?
Yes,
and so
yes.
when I talk to couples, I always say go back to 1 Corinthians 13. If you cannot put your partner's name where love says. So if I cannot say Marisha is kind, Marisha is patient, right? Then I probably shouldn't be with Marisha because she ain't fitting the First Corinthians definition of love, right?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
all those things, like Marisha, you really make it work. There's like you it's a beautiful movement, a dance, right? Of ebbing and flowing. And Marisha, I'm one of those purpose advocates. Shout out to my girl Antonia, who's had me do purpose with her in April for the past few years.
Yes.
And that, of course, is coming up. I believe in purpose. I believe in us being committed to figuring out how do we honor God with our lives, because that's the purpose which He's created us, right? To praise Him.
Yes.
Everything praises Him. All the earth praises Him. And so our lives should be a reflection of this praise. And therefore we find our skill, we find our talent, and we double it up, as the parable shows us, right? That you ought to make more. And we know that God only gives you what you can handle. So He ain't asking you for what you can handle, right? But if He's given it to you, He expects you to do something with it. So that's our purpose. It's as simple as that. But Marisha, you know how I know that this thing goes deeper than just purpose? Because there are atheists in this world who have happy, healthy marriages. And if an atheist could do it, we have to be able to say as Christians, then how come I can't get it together, right? Because if these people don't believe in God, but they can figure out a way to respect each other, to listen to each other, to communicate, then how much more are we called as Christians with
my goodness,
right? Supposed to be working it out together. So Marisha, I think it's a couple things. I think one, you want to find your purpose. But for me, I know that my purpose, I've been called to praise God through my voice, right? And to bring other people to hear God and to see God and to know God through my voice and through love and through affirmation and positivity. But that changes from time to time, Marisha. The seasons of my life may not allow it to be what it might have been in the season, right? My husband in the past has been called to make the earth and the products that we use in the earth more sustainable. And so he started out as an engineer, but he's a businessman now. And all of his businesses come back to this core idea that he wants to leave the earth better, even though we have to develop it. How can we protect it, right? And so there are different times in our life, and this seems to be the season where he would be the busiest, where he is working outside of the home longer, more hours. And so it doesn't even... I still have a purpose and he still have a purpose. But if I wanted to resent him for not being home all the time, even though this is the season, then my purpose really don't matter, because I still know what my purpose is. It's just that we both can't be away from our two children all hours of the day, right? And so it's more than just knowing purpose. Purpose is grounding, which is powerful, because so I know long-term, the vision God put in my life, He ain't let it fail. So whether it happened in 5 minutes, 5 months, or 5 years, or 50 years, it's going to come to pass because He already gave it to me. So purpose is good for grounding, but more than that, you also have to work on having the fruits of the spirit, right? Like what does your character look like? And how is that showing up in marriage? Marisha, one of the biggest challenges, though, is just straight up communication, letting people know how you feel in a respectful manner, and simultaneously making sure that they hear you. Because sometimes you may be telling somebody something, but what they hearing ain't what you say. Right? And it all becomes because we come with our own trauma. We come with our own baggage. We have our own parents who did things their own way. We all come into these things as 100% different people. So now this requires to understand each other, to communicate clearly, expectations for me to let you know how I feel and why I feel this way. And then for me to be willing to listen to you as you respond to, okay, Star, this is how you feel. Well, this is why this is happening. And then do I have the maturity to say, okay, I received that. And then we figure out a solution together. So a lot of it comes down to, what are my expectations? Am I communicating those? And am I listening to hear back from you? And then am I willing to bend? One of the reasons I'm very happy in my marriage, Marisha, I tell you no lie, is because I don't have to fight every battle, babe. Like, wait, it ain't as serious. There will be some things where it's like, okay, Carlos, no, this is how I feel. And we're going to have to work this one out. But for the most part, it's like, and I feel like too much of us is want to fight for like small stuff that don't matter.
Exactly.
Will this matter? Are you just being contentious to be contentious? And because so much of us have lacked authority in our lives, have lacked the opportunity to choose. Have always been told what to do, or have always been put down. We get into these relationships and we feel like if people don't listen to us, then, we have something to fight. Again, we have to do the healing. We have to do the work of allowing the Spirit of God to actually transform us so that we become more people who are loving and kind and considerate, that we become First Corinthians 13. And as we become 1 Corinthians 13, we'll be surprised how we see that in our partner.
It's so crazy. And this spills over so loudly into the conversation of national, like gender issues. I think that one of the things that I never quite got in that last, I don't know what to call that. I want to call it a referendum. I don't know what to call that. I
That's
just,
what it
I
was.
don't know. I don't know if I want to call it that. I just feel like it was a major failure.
Uh-huh.
Just personally, in my personal opinion, I don't feel like people were educated properly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the education portion of it was very poorly done. And so
Mm-hmm.
people didn't really know what decisions they were really making.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess we could call it a referendum. I mean, just for the sake of using its proper name. I would like to call it a hot mess, but hey, referendum. And I just remember like how intense the conversations were at that point in time. I remember that there were points in time that I actually stayed off of social media because I didn't want to see people grandstanding anymore. I didn't want to encounter the
Mm-hmm.
information anymore because I was just over it. I was just like, this is just way too much. Like people just have too much to say and like it's not making sense. And it's just, I don't want to call it trash, but it definitely could go in the garbage,
Uh-huh.
and I was just like, can we have sensible conversations here? Like, can we talk about what this truthfully means, not only just for us now, but what it means for the generations of women to come?
Mm-hmm.
um, where we are allowed to be who we are. We are allowed to have the equality and the equity, but it doesn't put the man down. And that was really the thing that was irritating me the most, Star. Like I had a moment I would never forget it, and that's why it's so ingrained in me. Like I got angry looking at my phone. I was like, no, this is so stupid. Like, why would you say this? This is so dumb. You know, and basically, it was a conversation that people were having in reference to the referendum at the time, saying that, oh no, these women they need to sit small, and because we like to tell people sit small here in the Bahamas. That's definitely still a favorite line that we like to say. No, y'all need to sit small, and the man is this, and blah 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 blah. And then the responses that came to it was just like, oh my gosh, this is not going to come to like any kind of sensible resolution. And when you start seeing like read more on somebody's comment, like that's it. Like somebody about to like pour out all their heart and their soul and their mind and spirit. And what I recognized is that we can I feel like we trivialize it a little bit too much. I feel like we make light of it too much. I think that it's something that, like you mentioned, definitely needs to be revisited. We do need to have this conversation again. This needs to come back before us as a country again. Like we need to have this conversation. But I'm not sure that our people, our Bahamian people, are in a place where we're ready to truthfully have these intentional, mature conversations as it relates to law and how it affects us as
Mm-hmm.
human beings. And I'm not saying that from a place of criticism. I'm saying that from a place of observation because we're in silly season again. And the fact that we call political season like silly season tells us that like we're not using our brains here. We're not using our minds. We're not engaging our intellect. We call it silly season because silly things are said and promises are made that, you know, we never see come to pass. And I'm so concerned. I hear so much of the language, and especially because of what we're exposed to now with like the pandemic, and everybody is on social media, like everybody is on social media. Grammy, granddaddy, auntie, uncle, mommy, daddy, grandbaby, and great grand. Everyone is on social media now. Everyone has a platform. Everyone has something to say. So people are talking, and my personal point of view, if I just want to make it very clear, we have a disclaimer that the views and comments on this show are not that of Glory 93.9 FM or the management and staff of the station, even though I am management, it's still not. It's still not. This is my personal view. I just don't know if we have matured our people enough as a nation to have these conversations, to make the decisions
So, Marisha,
from
I
an
think
intellectual place.
yeah, I think your passion and your concern is real, but I also tell people that having intellectual based conversations is a privilege, right? If we can't meet the needs of our
Uh,
people, if our people are hungry, are people of no warning water. They don't care about your ballot, and they don't care about you and
Exactly.
the actual conversation. And so it was important. I was a part of that Yes campaign, and it was important for me. Like, I remember one of the best conversations we had was in a hair salon. It was a hair salon off the Mackey Street area in the evening, and we just talked to some women, right? And one of the women who had been opposed to it originally was then able to come forward and say, well, you know, my dad is Bahamian, but my mom was Jamaican. I still don't have papers. And so now, because we're having this conversation on her level in her space, different perspective, right? And we just, well, I'm actually impacted by this. How can I now like work to make this better, or at least support you guys? Because hey, guess what? I don't have citizenship. I can't actually do nothing about it, right? But she's now able to lend her voice and to say, this is my story. And so I think a part of it is, one, we need to have conversations with people where they are. But we also need to make sure that we're taking care of parts of people's needs. Because at the end of the day, Marisha, I don't care about your ballot. I don't care about your equality if I can't have no water and I can't have no food. Like, they're my basic needs. And so what we find, and I don't want us to make this seem just like a Bahamian thing, you know, we've seen how our brothers and sisters in the North acted during their elections. We saw them storm the Capitol. This is not just a Bahamian thing. Again, I come back to the fact that it's Easter weekend. You know, Jesus went on the cross because the Pharisees said that he was disrupting the Roman government. All the Judas them wanted him to take over and Viking to get rid of the Romans, but now you charging him with a crime saying he trying to get rid of the Romans. Like, y'all confused. But the whole crowd right now wasn't y'all, because y'all silly just like everybody else, right? And so I the masses of people, when we get together, sometimes we don't make no sense. And so I put myself in there because I think a lot of us are passionate, a lot of us are emotional, and then sometimes in being that way, we can make poor choices. So I agree with you that I think it's something that whichever incoming government needs is that we're going to see elected, whether that this government returns or there's another government, needs to bring this to the fore. And what they need to do and ought to do for the Bahamian people is to do this referendum early on in their term. Too often we've used referendums as a gauge, right, to see whether or not we're going to win the next political election. And so you do it close enough to an election, because really in reality you're trying to see if the people still for you, and then you had voted no. So the FNM did it back in I think that was 97 or near 2002. They did it and it failed. The PLP did it very near 2012, whatever, 2017, and it again, right? Because you're too close to an election. And so it needs to stop being about you and the party and start to be really about the people who actually need to benefit from this legislature being changed. But I still stand behind it, Marisha, that we need equality on paper. And
we do.
I think for me, it really kind of broke my political spirit. I was more actively involved in political movements, not politics in terms of PLP, FNM, DNA, but political movements around the Bahamas prior to that Vote Yes campaign. And then after that, I just was kind of done. And it's because I saw so many intellectuals, people who are educated and can have high quality conversations, talking about stuff that didn't make sense, right? And just this fear that all these foreigners kind of come in and take everything from us. And again, it comes back to rooted in trauma, rooted in this idea that there's not enough for all of us, right? Rooted in this idea that somebody may come and be better than me. And therefore, I have to legally prevent you from coming here because I'm not man enough to do it on my own, or take something from me. And so we just have so much healing to do as a people around what is ours. And I believe that our governments also have to begin to show us more ways that they're proving to us to know as a Bahamian, you're right. But these people should have rights too, because they should be Bahamian, you know?
Exactly. It's just so much. And like I said, like I sit down and I look at it, you know, just like how you described, and I look at it sometimes and I'm like, this is like, I talk to God about it a lot, and I was like, wait, this is why we need you. I talk to him just like that. Like, this why we need you. And then I would always say to him, like, I just don't know how people live without you. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't understand like what atheists do when they're stressed out. I don't get it. I mean, more power to you. However you deal with it, I don't know. Because I know that there are things that I cannot go to human beings about.
No.
I can only go to God. like it's only he understands. And so I just am like, Jesus, you know. I don't have to say anything to you. I don't have to describe the ins and outs of the situation, because in fact, not only did you see what I was thinking while it was happening, you saw what the other person was thinking while it was happening too. So you know more than me. So how would you just work this thing out? You fix this. You work this out. I think, if I'm honest with you though, Star, here's my fear. My fear is that our children and our grandchildren will be born into systems just like the ones that we're living in now. That is my fear. My fear is that my daughter will feel like I felt when I would never forget it, when I first came back home from college. Um, and it would have been after I went on 23 job interviews, Star,
Mm-hmm.
and got no for all of them. And I
Wow.
finally decided not to be stubborn anymore and
Mm-hmm.
know that God was saying, come back home. I came
Mm-hmm.
home
Mm-hmm.
and I started applying for jobs. And my degree is in theology.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I'm applying for jobs and I'm being flat out discriminated against because I'm a female,
Yeah.
like just flat out. That was the
Mm-hmm.
first thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second issue that I had was I was a single female.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was I female,
You ain't got no
but I
husband in
was
the league now. You ain't got no mind to tell you what to do.
a single female. No, boo, you can't pass. No, you can't. No, you can't be. No, you pass around here. No, you can't be. No, worship
But
leader. No, you can't do that.
I'm a stray man.
Or you might come try to teach somebody husband. No, we can't have you coming up in here. And I just remember the days. Start listen to me when I tell you I cried.
Mm-hmm.
I cried so many days because I was more than qualified. I was more than qualified. I have experience that the majority of people who come out of seminary didn't have because I worked ministry before I went off to college. I
Mm-hmm.
started college at 21. I had already had like at least 4 or 5 years underneath my belt of experience doing ministry before I was educated on how to properly do ministry. I went to college. I have an associate's degree in music education. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have a bachelor's degree in theology. I have another bachelor's degree in worship and ministry. Like I'm educated. I'm qualified. I have experience. I'm also not a stranger. You know me. I'm from the Bahamas.
Yeah.
You know me.
Everywhere. I seen at least 20 funerals to your church in the last month.
Exactly. Like so. I mean, come on. Like and and so I just remember being in this place where I felt like honestly, I felt like I wasn't good enough because I was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
how that's how the nose made me feel. Hi,
I'm sorry again.
beautiful.
Life as a mommy. Say hi, Kyra.
Hi,
All right, now
Carol.
back to doing her stuff. Okay. Thank you. Give me a couple minutes. Yeah, yeah.
And
Look, I will tell you, you're not alone. You might know my mother-in-law was the first female African priest, and
yes.
her and my father-in-law actually met. Princeton has a seminary. They were doing courses here in the Bahamas, and they met at those courses, went off to Princeton together, and finished their degrees. This was her master's. So her and a man who's already a priest doing the same degree. She came back home and had to wait almost 20, no, like close to 18, 15 years. In order for them to call her to be a priest when she was very well qualified. And so your concerns are so valid. Marisha, I will tell you that I cannot guarantee that it will change for my daughter or for her children. I pray so.
Exactly.
I hope so. But when those moments when I think like that, I remember that change is going to come, whether it is in our lifetime or theirs or our great-great-grandchildren, right? Like the children in Egypt were crying out to God for years before he was able to send Moses to free them, right? For years after that, as they move into the Exodus and they have these judges and then they have these kings and then, they're under Babylon, they're crying out,
yes.
Messiah, and it takes him 2,000 years. And so at our time, the way that we see time, right, which is so limited, which is one perspective, which is this linear way, it's like God was taking so long. But in God's mind, Marisha, and his master plan, this thing is so much bigger than we can imagine. And so I think for us, we have to be encouraged. We have to remember that there are people who've been fighting this battle already. And so I honor people like Dame Doris Johnson. I honor people like Marion Bethel. Their story to us. And then we have to be committed, right? You coming on and having this show, you talking girl talk, you talking about finding your tribe, you having this conversation on equality. This is our contribution. Me being here and sharing with you, Marisha, we have to stand for this. We have to fight for this. This is our contribution. And so whether it's just my daughter hearing this conversation now and sitting down and her having to take up this fight in 20 years, or her being relieved of the fight because we fought our good fight, we know that right? And so it's a matter of being committed to it, knowing and trusting that God does all things well and that he has never failed us, even if it's taken him 2,000 years to do so.
I know, right? Listen, we got to bring this conversation to a close, and we're definitely going to get all of those comments that are coming in as we've been talking in towards the end here. But I don't want to miss this moment because we're not just live on Facebook now, Star. We actually have a podcast, and our podcast is international. So there are women from all around the world who are listening to this conversation right now. So we definitely want to say shout out to our podcasters. We love you and we appreciate you and we recognize as we mentioned briefly earlier, that this is a worldwide global struggle for women, where we're having these conversations, but we're not really seeing movement in the areas that we want to see movement. And we're just kind of like, okay, so what do we do? Like, how do we do this thing healthy? And so, Star, I want you to just to leave some last words for the women out there who are just like us, who we have platforms, we have people that we can influence, but we also know the hurdles that are ahead of us. We also know the systems that we're trying to break down, what it really takes. What would you say just to encourage your girlfriends? What would you say to your girlfriends?
So as I want to leave you guys with a couple of things. First, Marisha, thank you so much for having me. It's really been my pleasure to sit with you for this hour and just
Thank you so much for coming.
Definitely, you can call on me anytime. I'm more than happy to come back. In the Bahamas, we have this thing called the National Art Gallery. And about 15 to 20 years ago, it didn't exist. There were conversations around the fact that we need to create a space for art. Over, I want to say about 6 or 7 years ago, Amanda Coulson is her name, came in to run the National Art Gallery. Amanda's Bahamian, but she had been trained in England. She's curated museums all around the world. And Amanda wanted to bring art to the people. As Amanda's creating this vision over the National Art Gallery, she starts to engage the community. And so she brings in local artists. They start to paint walls. Marisha, 12 years ago, if you walked around the Bahamas and saw painted walls, was graffiti. It was a problem. I remember graffiti being a thing in the 90s.
Yes, right? I remember.
Walls and murals everywhere. And it's expected, right? And it's not just happening here in the Bahamas. In LA, I did a Instagram tour where they literally took us to all the murals that are famous, that people have painted, that people now take pictures in front of, right? And so there's been this global shift as the internet has opened, as it's expanded, as it has allowed artists to thrive, that has shown us that art is beautiful. Here in the Bahamas, Amanda was pushing that. And now we get to see artists like that just have these huge contracts. And so they design all the hotel walls, or they design walls for restaurants.
Yes.
But Amanda had this vision years ago. And I remember her giving this speech on it and the fact that people needed to come to the Bahamas for art. And now, like 12 years later, I'm seeing that, right? Sorry, guys, Cairo, I'm still on a call. Now, in addition to that, 4 years ago or so, Alive opens. And CMO is Gravette Brown. And Gravette says, we want Bahamians to be able to access art. Art is not just for the rich, right? And so before, unless you could go to the Louvre or you could afford to pay, you couldn't see this art. And so they brought in these Bahamian artists like Theo McLean, and he started to create phone cases for them. And then they started to paint murals too. And now art is everywhere. I share that story, Marisha, because for me, it's just a reminder that you can start with something small. It could seem small to you, but it can have impact that goes way beyond you. All you have to do is do your best and be your best, right? And then everybody's around you is enlightened and enriched by you just taking a stand for what God has called you to. So Marisha mentioned purpose earlier, and I want to come back to that and remind you guys that our purpose is to praise God, and we praise God when we live a full life. No more hiding. Too many of us hide. We dim our light. We don't want to shine too brightly. We're afraid that we're going to rub people the wrong way. We don't want people to talk about us, that God us, we want to be accepted. No way. Jesus was flipping these tables. And so we have to stop thinking we would have knocked over because he ain't into that. Right? So stand in your truth, stand in the power of who God has called you to be, and recognize there are beautiful things about you. You want to talk about finding your tribe? You can't find your tribe if you fake, because then only fake people are attracted to you. When you stand in your truth of who you are, then the right people will come along. And so I just really want to encourage you to continue to find yourself in God, to acknowledge the gifts that he's given you. They may not look like everybody else's gifts, right? Marisha is a singer. All my life, all I want to do is sing. That ain't what God blessed me with. Like, that ain't my gift. So I got to move on. Marisha.
You don't want it.
I don't want it in Marisha.
No.
Right? He pushed me, saying, no, that ain't for you, right? I'm a speaker. That's what I'm called to do. And so I have to walk in my ability to speak. You might be an organizer, and it may not seem like the greatest talent ever, but it is. For people like me, I need organizers in my life. Y'all just turn my life around. Right? Whatever you've been found to do, you do it with all your might, and trust that God will continue to work on you. The final thing I want to say is that you don't know everything. I've been coming to this revelation lately. It's something my grandmother, God rest her soul, would say to me all the time. You don't know nothing, right? And the older I get, the more God just opens my mind to him and to how he's moving and to how he's working. And so I don't want you guys to box God in. I want you to be open to the movement of his spirit. Keep leaning into each other. Keep trying to learn from people. Follow people that give you life, man. And as much as you can, get into some sort of small group that's going to be an accountability group for you. Find an accountability partner. And it's going to transform your life and your ability to just take a stand. And then who knows, art will come from you in a brand new way, and you won't even know what it is or how it looks, but your movement will be felt in the communities where you live.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much again, Anastarcia, for being with us today. You are such a blessing just to even have this conversation with you, I'm sharpened. I'm made the better. And so I wanted to thank you so much and just say thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Guys, we're coming right back. We're going to take a really quick break. We're going to get your comments in, and then we got to talk about this giveaway because we got tanks to give away. We got plenty tanks, all kind of tanks, just tanks for this. So listen, stay tuned to Girl Talk. We got some more stuff coming your way. Thank you so much for tuning into that show. Okay, guys. So, of course, those of you who've seen me for the day, you got it. The show was pre recorded. Thank you so much, Star, for doing that yesterday. She's enjoying her vacation with her lovely family, the Easter weekend. So, I want to get your comments in, and then we're going to talk about these giveaways. We'll do our fit of the week. And then we'll be done. Donzel Pratt, thank you so much for tuning in. He says, "You're one in a million with that mentality. Blessings." Deandra Pinder, she says, "Choice, yes." Donzel also says, "Choice is accessible from the beginning of time. Equality also means equal responsibility and accountability. The law places those two factors on the male gender. Therefore, equality is being viewed and indoctrinated in some instances to replace order. Submissiveness, interesting. It is the spiritual principle of authority being attacked." That is so powerful, Mr. Pratt. That is powerful. Nita Mo says, "Good day. Great convo as always. Thank you so much for tuning in." Shante says, "Purpose is necessary." Agreed. Larissa says, "Amen." Shante also says, "So true." Thanks so much for tuning in, Lucretia. Lucretia says, "Good show, ladies." Thank you so much for tuning in. Catherine Benaby, thank you. Thank you always for your support. Thank you. She says, "Loving the show." And Vanessa says, "Wow, this is a great show." Thank you so much to everyone who was tuned in. All right, so let's do this again. Before we dive into our fit of the day, y'all, listen, y'all come win these things. All you have to do is send a screenshot. That's all you got to do. Send a screenshot of our Instagram page that you've liked the Instagram page, and send a screenshot of the fact that you've subscribed to our podcast. If you search my name, Marisha, Mericha, or if you look for Girl Talk 2 for 2 in the Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts and whatever your podcast platform is, send us a screenshot that you have subscribed to the podcast, that you liked it and you subscribed it. Send us a screenshot that you've liked the Instagram page, and you can win a shampoo and conditioner from the main collection, courtesy of Lowe's Wholesale. Y'all, this stuff smells so good. It's so good. I love the fact that it's like organic. It has really awesome ingredients in it. So for my naturalistas out there, listen, you need this in your life. So that's all it takes for you to win. That's it. That's it. That's all it takes for you to win. Just like the page, like our Instagram page, look for Girl Talk 2 for 2. Or like I said, look for the podcast. You can find it under my name, Marisha, or you can look for Girl Talk 2 for 2. Like, subscribe it, send us a screenshot. Send the screenshot to our text line, 828-2543, 242-828-2543, and you can win the shampoo and conditioner from the main collection, courtesy of Lowe's, one of our sponsors. And while we're talking about sponsors, our main sponsor, the Catwalk Boutique. Here's our fit of the week for the Easter weekend. Look at this gorgeous beauty. Gorgeous beauty. Listen, this dress, you need this in your life. It's available size small, medium, large. They have another version to it for the thick girls in plus size. So you need to check it out. Check my girl Gia out at the Catwalk Boutique. Listen, she have Easter dresses gone to bed. Like, if you still ain't have your dress for Sunday, listen, my girl Gia at the Catwalk Boutique, she got you. She got you. So check her out. And listen, get it together, dress up. We finally could go to church on Easter Sunday. Last year we was in a pandemic and we couldn't go to church. Y'all, let's go to church. Let's go to church. Let's go to church. I pray that you were encouraged by today's conversation. And to my women out there who, my girlfriends out there who you may have been discriminated against, or you may be like the example that Anastarcia gave, where, you know, you live in this country
but unfortunately, you haven't been able to get sorted out because of the laws that exist and the discrimination against women. I want to encourage you to keep on fighting. I want to encourage you to keep on making that stance. I want to encourage you to keep on telling your story. Don't allow the current situations and circumstances to cause you to become silent concerning what your truth is and what needs to happen for the generations to come. We ask the question, do we really want equality and equity as women? And the reality of the matter is we want the ability to choose as women. That's what we want. That's what we desire. We desire the ability to choose, not to be lorded over, not to have to be subject to whatever it is that we are dictated because of our gender. We want to be seen as the woman who is able to do whatever she wants to do based upon her choice. Yeah, we do want equality, and we have no problem making a balance and making a decision to not choose to do some things because we don't need to do it. It's not a matter of what a man is supposed to do, what a woman is supposed to do. It's the matter of I can do it, and so allow me to. And that's really all we were saying today. All we were saying today is let's be our sister's keeper, and let's look out for her, but also to let's support other women. Let's ensure that freedom of choice is what we pass down to the generations to come. Let's not fight for it. Let's fight for the freedom of choice, for the choice to do whatever it is that a woman can do, because we are powerful beings. We are powerful beings. So I want to encourage my girlfriends out there, listen, get you some good girlfriends. Find your tribe. We say it every week. You need them. You need you some good girlfriends to help you, to support you, to be there, to be the shoulder to cry on, to be the iron that sharpens iron. You definitely need to get you some good girlfriends. And so go find you some good bedfellows. Yeah, that's what we say every week. It's your girl, Marisha. It's been another wonderful episode of our brand new season of Girl Talk. We're going to be back next week. I'm so excited about next week's conversation with Pastor Monica Haskell out of Delaware. Yes, Pastor Monica. And she's going to be talking about next week, similar to what we were just mentioning just now. The world needs your voice. The world needs your voice. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. And then I got another show coming up the following week. Listen, y'all want to tune in for the show. Y'all want to tune in for this show. On April 15th, the bishop is going to be in studio with us. And our topic is My Marriage Matters. We're going to have a even deeper conversation on marriage. And we're talking to women. I'm so excited for these upcoming shows. Y'all listen. Don't miss it. Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. All right, y'all. I gotta go. I gotta get up on out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love y'all. I promise y'all I could be right back here next week, 4:30 p.m. on Thursday for another episode of Girl Talk live and in living color. Have a glory-filled Easter weekend. Find a tribe.
For the best mix in gospel,